Hey, this is Lou. I wanted to share some questions that you should ask before approaching a web designer. I have been working in the web and digital marketing space since 2011, and I often encounter business owners who are maybe building their website for the first time and don't really know what to expect and not knowing what to ask, and that can be tricky, that can be a bit, strange. So I thought it would be helpful to share some things that are good for you to know before you go out and start shopping around and asking for budgets and approaching web designers for your new website. And I hope this also helps if you already have one and are looking for a rebuild. I believe this information will be useful to you as well. So in this episode, I'm going to cover platform, budget, goals, target audience, visual look and feel, content, management and updates, and your marketing strategy. So let's first talk about your platform. So what I mean by platform is that when you have a website, you need a place for the pages and files to live. And this is separate to what we call a domain name. So your domain name is the address and the platform is where we put the stuff. And I like to use the analogy of car and license plate. So both the car and the license registration plate should belong to you, and your web hosting platform is like your car and the license plate is your domain. So your whatever your name is .com, whatever your name is .com.au. And so there are many different hosting platforms that you can put your website on. Some of these may require you to know a little bit of code, a little bit of computer language to get the desired look and results you want. There are others which are a bit simpler and will let you use easy visual drag and drop tools, so tools that let you build things. What you see is what you get, and there's a whole array of different options and different types of platforms to build your website on depending on what you need. So for someone who requires leads or appointments, two common platforms that I like to use for this are WordPress and Squarespace. And for online shops, typically Shopify is the way to go. Now, I personally specialize in WordPress because I've used that for most of my working career. You can build a whole variety of different types of websites with that. And I'm very comfortable and very confident in setting up a website for a wide array of clients with that. And there's also Squarespace, which is requires a little bit less technical knowledge. It may cost a little bit more month over month for you to have your website up and running. But yeah, those are a couple of ones to consider, and by all means, feel free to explore all the different options out there and pick one that you feel is right for you and your needs. So the next thing I want to talk about is budget. You should allocate some money to this project. I get a lot of new website owners telling me that they don't know how much it should cost, and based on time tracked for projects that I've worked on, many website projects can take around 40 hours of work altogether, and that includes adding your content to the site. It includes revisions, so sometimes we might want to show you a preview and then maybe you'd like some tweaks to the design before it goes public, so there may be a little bit of back and forth there. It is a good idea to include testing, so maybe you're previewing your website on your computer, and so are we, but it's a good idea to just check and see how this might look to somebody using a mobile phone. For many businesses, that a lot of their customers maybe around 50% or more of their customers will see the website on the phone. And if you're designing on a computer, looking at it on the phone might be a second thought. So a good web designer will make sure that it functions and looks well across an array of devices, iPhones, phones, computers, tablets, the whole thing. So something like that can take around 40 hours. And if you come to a web designer expecting a budget of like $400 or $500, that's like paying someone $10 an hour. And if you wouldn't expect a $10 an hour for yourself, then I wouldn't put that on a web designer. So for many non-e-commerce, non-shopping cart websites, a good amount of money to set aside is about 3,000 to 10,000 Australian dollars. And do expect to pay a bit more for an online shop, because we are going to need some time to upload your products and make sure that your payment processes work. And I would strongly advise also to get some proper legal documents that outline things like returns and refunds, and just make sure that that's all present so that your customers understand what they can do and what you will actually fulfill for them if they have an issue with your order. Now, I personally don't work on e-commerce websites, but as someone who works in this industry and someone who also as a consumer shops online, I find it very, very useful and important to have those documents. And even if I don't read them word for word, it does help me trust your business more and make me more inclined to buy from you. On the flip side, if those trust indicators are not there, I'm going to be less inclined to buy from you. All right, so next thing that I'd like to talk about is goals. So what are your main reasons for needing a website? This is something that is a good idea to have fleshed out before you approach a web designer. And the more specific and the more defined your goals are, the better. And the easier and more frictionless our web design process will be. So one model that I like to use and that my mentors like to use is SMART goals. So these are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So the last thing that we want to do is have some kind of website or marketing goal that's like maybe sounds really great on paper, but isn't really something that you can facilitate or manage through your business. So you might need a certain number of leads per month in order to make enough money to keep your business going. But you might also want to increase the number of leads and sales that you get so that you can employ more people, or maybe you've got some other goals in mind that you'd like to achieve with your business. And having all that stuff sorted out before you approach someone to build a website is very handy. One of the things that one of my instructors has told me is that building a website just to generate leads is one thing, but building or possibly redesigning a website because you want to sell your business in future is an entirely different thing. We're going to have to think about some different things if you're building a business so you can sell it so that it looks more enticing to a potential buyer. Okay, so next let's talk about your target audience. Who are they? What do they need to get from your website? Can we guide them on a path to getting what they need from you? Are they coming to you for information? Are they coming to you to book an appointment? What does your website need to do for them? And then what would you like them to do when they get to your website? Now, if you're DIYing your website, by all means, experiment here and try things out. Earlier in my career, I used to discourage business owners from DIYing, but this can actually be an interesting exercise for you if you're also sort of figuring out what you want your business to be. But otherwise, if your business is more established and you're maybe looking for a redesign, then get clear on who your target customers, your target audience are, and what the website needs to do for them. And then we can consider developing content and a navigation structure around guiding those people to make a buying decision with you. Next, let's look at visual look and feel. So this is something, again, that when someone's new to getting the website built, maybe this hasn't been fleshed out. Maybe you're expecting your web designer to also be a logo designer and a brand designer and do all that stuff. So in some cases, yes, your web designer may also be a graphic designer, but also don't make sure it's clear what you're getting from working with another person. So don't assume that if you don't have a brand or a logo and all that stuff that it's included. I would consider those things to be entirely separate exercises from building a website, and those tasks are often I would allocate those specifically to someone who designs brands and designs logos and all that visual stuff. So that stuff is very useful to have when you come to a web designer. So your web designer's specialty is in making pages that get customers to flow towards you and get them to their goals. So make sure that if you want good results, I would say go to a brand designer specifically to sort out your look and feel, your logo, your palette, your business cards and all that. And then you can send those to your web designer and they can translate those visual things into a more interactive piece of work that guides customers towards you. Okay, so now let's look at content. Your website has to say something. And again, if you're new to getting someone to make a website for you, I wouldn't assume that the job of what words to put on your website is the job of your web designer. So if you're working with someone really good, their speciality is creating an interface, a tool, an interactive thing, an interactive piece of media to get customers to come to you. Getting the words right is also another exercise in and of itself. So you may be really good at what you do. You may be very well trained and experienced, but getting a customer over the line and convinced and feeling really good about doing business with you, it can be something else. So it's really important to, even if you are an expert in what you do, to think about what that looks like from the customer's perspective. What do they want to hear? What is in it for them? What is in it for them if they choose to work for you? What do they get out of a business relationship with you or being a client or a customer of you? If this is something that you feel like you struggle with, maybe you're not really quite sure what to say, what kind of messages resonate, what kind of messages get people to take up your offer. This is something that I would strongly encourage you to work on with a copywriter before you construct a website. I find that I will have a much easier time creating the pages for your content. If you go around the other way and have a website layout first and no content, it's going to be a little bit trickier, and you end up having to sort of redesign and restructure your pages to the content that is given later. So figure out the content first, figure out what you need to say, how much you need to say, and then send that to your web designer. So it really helps if you're considering a website. You might want to have the copywriting and the website happening in tandem, or the copy happen first and get that done and dusted, and then initiate the website with your web designer. And same goes for any additional media or photos that you want to get. You're going to have a much better time designing the website around the look and feel of your photos, as opposed to giving you something with placeholders that may not actually represent what the final photos will look like. So also, if you are considering getting some photos, It is a good idea to work in tandem with your photographer and web designer, potentially even approach the photographer or videographer first, get those done and dusted, and then we can look at adding that content to the website. Okay, now let's look at management, maintenance, updates. Whose job is that? Well, this really needs to be spelled out when you're creating your website. If it's you, if you're DIYing it and you're happy to take care of these things yourself, by all means, that's fine. But if you're maybe it's your first time engaging with a web designer, don't assume that after the website's finished that they're going to help, unless that a plan was specified before you started working together or after. So it is like, by all means, reach out to your web designer or web developer after the project's finished. But I do find that in some cases, especially with beginners and amateurs, that they may not actually respond to you because they're too busy chasing up new projects. So just bear in mind and make sure that a maintenance plan is spelled out, and whether it's you or your web designer or someone on your team, keeping your website up to date, keeping the content fresh. And if you're using something like WordPress, keeping it secure is going to be someone's responsibility. Even with things like access and passwords, that's someone's responsibility. And if you share your passwords with someone else to help update your website, that's a security issue that you got to keep in mind. So make sure that you've considered that and you've got an action plan for keeping your website updated and secure. Now, the final thing that I would like to touch on is your marketing strategy. So unfortunately, building a website is not a case of if you build it, they will come. Pressing the on button, hitting publish, the act of uploading and publishing your website is not the thing that's going to bring a rush of new customers in. So unless you're working with someone on a marketing strategy, there needs to be a plan here. Now, whether that's using social media, whether that's you going out to shows, going out networking, SEO, paid ads, that is something to work out, and that is an ongoing process if you want to use your website to generate leads and sales. It's not a set and forget thing. It's not you publish your website and automatically people come to you. Ongoing work is going to be needed here. So again, this is something that you can discuss with your web designer. This is something that maybe you can get someone on your team to work on, or you can engage with another service provider. Just make sure that you have got something in place, because unless it is said in your contract when working with your web designer, it's on you to bring people to your website. Often a web designer will do what we call SEO basics. So we will submit your website to search engines so that they're in their database, they're in the potential search results that can come up when someone's searching. But in order to maintain your position in those results and reach higher positions, ongoing work is going to be needed. And if you're not prepared to do that yourself, that is something that you'll have to employ someone else to do. And if you don't want to go down the search engine result, you can use social media. Like I said, you can go out to networking events, trade shows, connect with people who are relevant to your target audience. And that's how you're going to get people going to your website. So I hope you found this information helpful. If you've got any questions to do with owning a website, getting it up and running, getting people to visit it, please reach out and I'm happy to have a chat. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to share this information with you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.